This is Bedtime Stories, Grown-Up Edition, Short Stories, The Middle, Part 4. When we left off, despite the fact that Tru wasn't physically harmed, she was clearly not okay after the crash on the side of the mountain, the resulting avalanche, and the time that the family and Tru spent at the hospital. She couldn't hide the inner turmoil going on inside her, and Woody thought it was somehow connected to her heroism. He had no idea that she was on the verge of a panic attack because she low-key had PTSD from her last experience visiting a hospital. Her high school sweetheart and the man she intended to marry died less than 6 months after being diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. And the entire time that he was fighting for his life, Tru had no clue because he'd cut her out. When Woody returned from his second trip to the hospital, he went to see what was going on with Tru, and he found her soaking in the bathtub, and when they were talking, he just happened to call her Lil Bit. He had no clue that was the nickname that Bo had for her, and hearing it broke the dam that was barely holding her emotions at bay. Instinctively, Woody comforted her, and when she was finally done crying, Woody was afraid to move. He had his arms wrapped around her in the tub, and since she was fully immersed, his sleeves were soaking wet. He also didn't know if he'd ever be in the position to hold Tru in his arms like this ever again. And something about it felt right. He didn't want her to hurt, and he didn't want the reason that he was holding her to be because she was hurting. But he didn't want to stop holding her either. When she pulled away, Woody had to fight the urge to kiss her. He wanted her, and he wanted her bad. Instead of having a devil on one shoulder and an angel on the other, Big Wood had a real nigga on one shoulder and a real man on the other. One was telling him to take advantage of the moment, and the other was reminding him that he had a mother and 2 sisters that he loved and would never want any man to take advantage of like that. And remembering that he'd almost lost one of those sisters that same day made it real easy for him to figure out which man to listen to. He looked around until he spotted her wash rag. He grabbed it, dipped it in the water, grabbed her bar of soap, lathered the washcloth, pulled her to a sitting position, and rubbed circles in her back. When he felt her relax, he leaned her back and gave her arms and her legs the same treatment. Then he rinsed the rag and handed it to her. Then he said, "I'm gonna hop in the shower while you handle your business." And when he was done, he headed into the adjoining room, threw on some sweats, tapped on the door and said, "When you finish, meet me in the Four Seasons room." About 20 minutes later, Woody was waiting for Tru in the Four Seasons room, an enclosed patio area off the side of the house that had seating, a built-in fire pit / fireplace, and a 3-sided view of the mountains and surrounding area. The view was breathtaking, and the lights in the distance created a pretty nice ambiance. When Tru entered the patio, she was dressed in a vibrantly hued lounge set with a matching fluffy robe and slippers, and she was pleasantly surprised to see that Woody was waiting for her with mugs of cocoa, a plate of halal marshmallows, chocolate, and graham crackers. He handed her a mug and a pair of s'more roasting tongs, and then he said, "Talk to me, little mama." When the two made eye contact, Tru was seeing Woody in a whole new light. It was not lost on her that he had the opportunity to at least attempt to take advantage of her vulnerability back in that bathroom. But instead, he chose to comfort her. And now, he was attempting to support and befriend her. And up until that point, the only people who'd ever been there for her when the loss of Bo was heavy on her, like it was then, was Stephanie and Rennie. So Tru said, "The only man that I've ever loved died over a decade ago, and he took my heart and my dreams with him." As Tru told Woody about the love that she had and lost with Bo, she inadvertently told him so much more. What she said and what she didn't say worked together to paint a picture for Woody of Tru's life in such a way that explained how she'd become a savage. When she was done, Woody said, "So, since then you just been taking men on test drives?" Tru said, "For the most part, with one exception. Some years after I graduated from college and went back home to run my parents' restaurant, a dude I knew back at LSU walked into the restaurant one day. There'd never been anything between us. We was just cool. He was in a frat, played football, was pretty popular on campus, and He was one of the few guys that I knew who fit that bill, who also had a girlfriend who he was faithful to, that I was aware of. There weren't any rumors on campus about him, at least. So when I had time to take a break, I sat down at his table and we chopped it up. Then Tru went on a trip down memory lane. She told Woody about her brief affair with Daniel Darcy. Daniel was just passing through the small town where Tru lived on his way from an interview at a financial services firm in Wake Forest. He said, "Yeah, I heard through the grapevine that you'd come back to your hometown and was running this nice little Creole restaurant. So I looked it up and I saw that it was less than an hour from where I was interviewing. So I decided to stop in and see what you were into." As they continued conversing, Daniel asked Tru, "So whatever happened to old boy that you was with, you was supposed to marry and move to Durham? I think he was going to Duke, right?" Tru said, "Yeah, that didn't work out. Whatever happened with you and old girl? She was a cheerleader, right?" Daniel laughed and said, "Yeah, that didn't work out either." Eventually, Daniel asked Tru out for dinner, and Tru told him, "I'm not dating right now." Daniel said, "So you can't have dinner with an old friend?" Tru said, "We were never friends." Daniel said, "Well, I'm going to be in your neck of the woods if I decide to take this job, and I'm going to need some friends. What's wrong with you helping me get acclimated, showing me around the area, and we sharing a meal together?" Tru said, "That's cool, as long as I can bring my friends." Daniel said, "Stephanie and Rennie, right?" Tru said, "Yep." Daniel said, "Cool. See if they're available. We can all hang out. My treat. That way you know I'm just being friendly." That night, the three musketeers met Daniel at the hotel that he was staying in Wake Forest, and they showed him the time of his life. They had a blast. Shortly thereafter, he took the job and reached out to Tru. He said, "Listen, I need to be honest with you. The only reason why I never pushed up when we was in school was because I had a girl and you had a man. But like you said, that didn't work out. You also said we were never friends. So how about we give it a go? I'm single, you single?" Tru cut him off and said, "I don't have room in my life right now for anything serious, Daniel. I keep my romantic life as uncomplicated as possible. So if you can get in where you fit in, cool." Daniel and Tru went on a couple dates just as friends, and one day Tru asked what happened with Daniel and the cheerleader. And Daniel said, "We actually got married after college. And 2 years later, we got divorced." When Tru asked why, Daniel said, "We had different ideas about what being married was supposed to be like, and we wanted very different things. She was ready to quit her job, have children, and be a stay-at-home wife and mother. And I was focused on climbing the corporate ladder, making a name for myself, traveling the world, and moving around the country. She thought that because I started working at my father's business right out of college, that I was content with staying in our hometown, that I would coach Little League and serve on the church board. And I ain't signed up for none of that." When Tru asked, did they discuss any of this before they got married, Daniel said, "I thought we did. I never gave her any indication that I wanted that life. And she never said that she was expecting that life. I mean, this ain't the 50s. Who goes to college, gets a degree, and gets a good job just so that they could get married, get pregnant, and stay home? I mean, she could have stayed in our hometown if that's all she wanted." Tru asked, "So you weren't interested in a traditional marriage, is what you're saying?" Daniel said, "No, I'm not saying that." Tru said, "Then what exactly was the problem?" Daniel said, "The problem was that I have issue with somebody marrying me under false pretenses, painting a picture of a life they don't plan on living, and then trying to manipulate me into giving them the life that they secretly planned all along." Tru said, "I have a feeling that you're leaving something out, Daniel." Daniel said, "That's because I am. I don't really want to rehash all of the reasons and ways that my marriage failed. I'm trying to move on and see where things go with me and you." Tru said, "Well, I can assure you that I have no plans on getting married, having babies, or settling down. That dream died when Bo did." Daniel said, "Whoa, that's heavy. What happened?" Tru gave him the short, redacted version of Bo's death, and Daniel said, "So basically, you've given up on love?" Tru said, "No, I'm just not looking for it and I'm perfectly okay if it never finds me again. I'd rather just run my family's restaurant till I figure out what really excites me. Have fun, travel, and have orgasms. After that day, whenever they were both free, Daniel wined, dined, and entertained Tru. They had fun, they traveled, and when they couldn't get together, Daniel sent her flowers and gifts, called her on the phone, and did everything he could to make sure that she knew that he was invested in her happiness. Shortly before Daniel walked into the restaurant, Tru's parents had retired. She and her immediate older sister, Indira, were managing the restaurant together. Their two younger sisters, Lacey and Grace, were both working at the restaurant. Their oldest sister, Morgan, was basically MIA. She had ran off and married a man in the military, fresh out of high school, and rarely, if ever, visited home. So with three of her sisters working at the restaurant, Tru had quite a bit of free time. Before Daniel came, she spent most of that time with her two best friends and alone. But Daniel was applying pressure, and it didn't hurt that he was the only man Tru had ever been with who was well endowed and knew how to work his equipment and hers. So once or twice a month, after Tru closed up the restaurant on Saturday night, she'd drive to Wake Forest, meet Daniel for a late dinner, enjoy some Saturday night entertainment on the town, and then wear out the springs in his mattress. They'd get up the next morning and do it all over again. And later that evening, she'd head back home. After a few months, Tru was on the verge of buying what Daniel was selling. Unfortunately, though, he overplayed his hand. He invited her to a black tie event at his job, sent her the money for hair, makeup, clothes, and accessories, and when they met outside of the hotel where the event was being held, he slipped a diamond ring on her left ring finger and told her, "Just play along, I'll explain later." And when they got inside, he proceeded to introduce her all around as his fiance, and his colleagues and bosses all acted like they'd heard all about her. Before the event was even over, Tru said, "Walk me to my car." At her car, she took the ring off, put it in his hand, and said, "Yeah, I don't know what that was about, but that wasn't okay." A few hours later, he was on her phone, apologizing and claiming that all of the partners and higher ups were married or engaged, and in order for them to take him seriously, he needed to be attached too. So he lied and said that they were engaged. He said that it looked better for his career for them to believe that he was in a committed relationship. Tru decided that she needed to put some distance between her and Daniel. A few weeks later, when Tru's older sister Indira came home from her trip visiting her boyfriend and announced that she was now a fiance and that the two would be married and she'd be moving 5 hours away, her parents were ecstatic for Indira, but they made no mention of how they'd replace her in the family business. When Tru asked how the restaurant would operate with one less person at the helm, her parents told her to use that business degree that they paid for and figure it out. When Lacey and Grace made no attempts to step up and do more, because they were content with taking orders, greeting guests, running the cash register, bussing tables, and working at the restaurant, and neither had any interest in management or operations, Tru decided to take her parents' advice. She identified ways to cut costs, increase revenue, and make overall improvements to the appearance and ambiance of the restaurant. She enlisted Stephanie and Rennie's help, leaning on Stephanie's marketing expertise and Rennie's organization skills, and she was too busy to entertain Daniel and his shenanigans. So one day, when Daniel hadn't heard from or seen Tru in weeks, he decided to show up at her parents' house. When they told him that she was at the restaurant, he headed there. The restaurant was closed, and Tru was up on a ladder, painting the shutters with Stephanie at the bottom spotting her. When she came down, Daniel just shook his head and said, "So, you worked Sunday brunch, and now you're out here painting the damn building? I don't understand why you ain't just hire somebody to do this, Tru." Tru said, "'Cause we can't afford to pay somebody to do things that we can do ourselves." When Daniel offered to give her the money, Tru said, "To what end, Daniel? Are you trying to help me and my family with our restaurant, or free up my time so that I'm available to you?" Daniel said, "Both. But what's wrong with that?" Tru said, "This is my priority right now, Daniel. Daniel said, so your sister can go off and get married and leave the restaurant and you just stuck here? Tru said, I'm not stuck. It was always the plan that I would come back and run my family's restaurant. Daniel asked, but whose plan was it? If I recall, your plan was to move to Durham and marry Bo. He died and you fell back to your parents' plan. I don't understand why this is the priority. Tru was hot as fish grease. Not only did Daniel have the unmitigated gall to let Bo's name fall from his soup coolers, but he had the audacity to question Tru's priorities. Tru said, what is it that you want? What are your priorities, Daniel? Daniel told her that he got a job offer in California and that he wanted her to go with him because he was in love with her. Tru asked, and what would I do in California? Daniel said, whatever you want, work or don't, doesn't matter. I can afford to take care of you. We can get married and have some beautiful babies. Tru cut him off and said, take the job or don't, Daniel. But leave me out of your plans and your priorities. Woody said, damn, little mama. Tru said, what? I'd already made a plan with one man before, a man who I loved and I knew he loved me. And that plan had already gone to hell. Plus, Daniel was clingy, needy, manipulative, and doing too damn much too damn fast. Woody said, you don't think he loved you? Tru said, no. He was moving up the corporate ladder and he wanted the aesthetic of having me as his wife. He'd already made too many offhand comments about my appearance and about making light-skinned, light-eyed babies with me. I hate being fetishized, and I know a self-hating Negro when I see one. Besides, what he was offering me was the exact same thing that his first wife wanted. He should have kept her, but she was his starter wife, and he was trying to upgrade to his trophy wife, and I wasn't going to be her. But he said, then what happened? And Tru said, oh, for the next 2 months, he became a bona fide stalker. I told you, they love it here. Calling over and over, showing up at the house, the restaurant. I was so glad when he finally took that job and moved to California. But the calls didn't stop. After about 6 months, I let him convince me to come and visit him in California. And I was due for a vacation. So I decided to go, but I made it clear to him that he needed to put me up in a hotel because I was not staying at his new condo. After a few days of fun in the sun, he invited me to come at least see his condo, and I agreed. And I wasn't there 15 minutes before he made a move. And when I shut him down, he got aggressive. Woody said, he tried to take it? Tru said, yeah. And I summarily whooped his ass all over that house. When the fight ended up in the kitchen, I ended up grabbing a vase off his island and bashing his head in. Woody said, damn. Tru said, and while I sat in jail, my lawyer found evidence that I was not the first woman that Daniel got physical with. Apparently, his first wife left because she'd gotten tired of being his victim. But he said, and is that when you decided that you'd always get a separate hotel room? Tru said, yep. And that's also when I decided that I'll never give a nigga a second chance, because I just might end up having to bash his head in with a vase in his own kitchen.